I am joined by Tim Lopez. He's the current chef instructor at Jules E. Massbaum Area Vocational Technical High School, and he's the former first cook and grill chef at the Philadelphia Eagles NovaCare Complex. Tim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing well. So I guess the first question is, you were with the Eagles for 13 years, and now you have moved on. A lot of people dream of working for a professional team, so why did you decide to move on from the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, it wasn't an easy decision. That was literally probably one of the best dream jobs that a chef can have is feeding people that are constantly hungry. And those football players are constantly hungry. If you forgive my background sound here, I'm sorry. I got a fire truck going through. But anyway, one of the dream jobs that I always wanted as a chef was to cook in an environment where we were guaranteed to make a lot of food, but make a lot of quality food, make a lot of people happy with our food. And nobody's happier than an athlete because they're always hungry. And I decided to leave after a long, hard soul searching because I'd been doing it for well over a decade, 13 years. And I had an opportunity to pass on some of the skills that I have learned and used and that I've grown with over the years at the Eagles to the next generation of chefs in Philadelphia. So when the opportunity came up, I initially thought, no, you know what, I'm probably going to just stay with the Eagles. But the more I thought about it, the more the life of a teacher, the hours of a teacher, and the reward of a teacher of being able to help the next generation of chefs go on to possibly go cook for the Eagles in Philadelphia as well, or go on to a different sports team, open up a restaurant, a food truck. I mean, there's a million different things that you can do as a chef in this world. And I have a lot to teach, and I have a lot of stories, and I have a lot of experience that I want to share. So, and like I said, the hours was a big part of it. Cooking for a football team almost 7 days a week takes its toll on you with the hours per day. Sometimes we'd be in there anywhere from 12 to 18-hour days, depending on what was needed and if it was crunch time, if it was game time. And it's going to be a different mindset for me working at the school, but I will put my same passion into it.
You mentioned long hours. So could you describe, I guess, how much you had to do per week with the Eagles, like how much food you had to make, how all the materials needed, how many chefs you had with you, just everything involved in that massive process?
Well, it's an incredibly huge process. And ironically, you asked that question because that's exactly what we're handling on my own podcast, Feeding with the Birds. This season, in season 4, we're looking back at my 13 years at the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm able to draw from memory some of the amazing quantities of food to get these guys, fed and get them fueled up and on the field. I mean, on an average day during the football season, let's take breakfast, for example. We're looking at anywhere between 350 to 400 fresh cracked eggs every day. We're looking at anywhere from 40 to 50 pounds of breakfast meat, anywhere around 100 to 150 pounds of fresh cut fruit, 50 pounds of potatoes and hash browns, a multitude of pancakes, more waffles than you or I could probably ever eat in one sitting, and just an incredible amount of omelets and sandwiches and wraps and breakfast delights. I mean, think about going to like a hotel spread, the best breakfast buffet you could find every single day at the Philadelphia Eagles. And we're serving a football team, and one of those guys, especially if he's on defense, those guys know how to eat, and they can put away probably 2 to 3 times what you or I would put away in a single meal. But they burn it off like that. I mean, they are on that field. They're in the weight room. They're running drills. They're doing practices. And so as much as like, wow, I could never eat that, or I don't see how these athletes eat that and then go, run a 40. They do it because their bodies need that fuel, and they burn it off real quickly. So, yeah, it was always a challenge to keep up with the demands of a healthy football team and not only give them what they wanted to eat, but give them what they needed to eat and focus on their nutrition. Lunchtime, we might go through, I would say at least 80 or 90 pounds of chicken products, many fresh cut steaks. I'd say anywhere between 40 to 50 pounds of steak. We'd always have a seafood option. There'd be multiple stations throughout our cafeteria, guaranteed to give as many options as possible to our football team and to our building staff, to our coaches, to our trainers. Options is a huge thing in the Philadelphia Eagles cafeteria. You have to be able to come in and, based on what your body needs to hit that field or hit the weight room or work with these guys training them, or even just our front office staff, just to be there day after day. There was different plans in place, different foods, different stations that appealed to any diet. And it was a massive undertaking, and it was always exciting.
Now, you mentioned the caloric intake that these players get consumed per day as well as burned per day. So we do see a lot of retired players. They look out of playing shape, and I'm thinking that could possibly be due to that caloric intake. So how hard is it for someone to go from that athlete's diet where they're eating a lot per day, but they're also burning it off, to going to a diet that maybe me or you would have?
I think it would be very hard to do. I mean, I can't speak too much from a nutritional standpoint. We had nutritional coordinators and liaisons in place that worked with our executive chef, that worked with us in the cafeteria and the fuel bar down the hall to scan these guys' body mass index and check out where they're coming from. And based on the position they're playing, how much they're working out, the time of year, what their individual needs were, you had to tailor their diet to that. When a lot of these guys leave the NFL and they retire, or say they move on to a different career, they're not hitting their bodies as hard every day. I mean, our guys at the Eagles were working out almost every day. There were morning and afternoon lifts. There was practice on and off the field. There were individual drills for different positions. And to suddenly not have that be part of your life and start to eat in a way that, you know, some guys, I mean, I'm not really seeing too much of this first person, but I see some guys, some alumni that come back and visit, and either like the guy was like bulked up and then he's super thin. And it's because he doesn't need to eat that huge amount of calories every day because he's not burning it off. There's other guys that were super thin that, you know, kind of gain a lot of weight after football because the whole time they were there, like say a wide receiver, or a tight end, or somebody that needed to be light and fast and lean, doesn't maybe necessarily have to keep up with that type of diet after football. So you see a bunch of guys kind of behaving and eating differently after football. But during football, it's all very rigorous. It's all very planned out. The diets are like down to the calorie, what they need to consume to be spectacular on the field.
And you also mentioned your podcast, Feeding the Birds, and that's something you did while with the Eagles, and you're continuing to do it for at least for now. Mm-hmm. And you were a communications major at IC. So how did maybe your classes or your major at Ithaca College help you in doing that podcast?
The biggest thing I learned from communications is how to talk to people. I know sometimes we might take that for granted in any type of job. And it's just a way that, you know, when you're running a podcast or an interview type show, you have to make the person feel comfortable talking to you, and you have to be comfortable talking to them. And a lot of what I learned in the communications and corporate communications departments at IC was a way to present myself and my ideas clearly, professionally, and you want to put your audience at ease and also get them to be interested in what you have to say. Because I could talk to football players all day long. If they don't care what I'm talking about, if I don't connect it to them, I'm not going to get a good interview out of it. You know, I could talk with Lane Johnson or Brandon Graham about chicken fried steak. Yeah, they love it, but why do they care about talking about it with me? And so a lot of the ways that I use some of those skills was just try to get personal with them on a level and get personal with the communication as it related to food and get them to share their stories of growing up, what it was like to eat as a collegiate athlete versus what it's like to eat in the NFL. What are their cheat foods? What are their guilty pleasures? It just kind of, for lack of a better word, it kind of humanizes these guys that are larger than life on your TV that are charging that field every Sunday and brings them down to your level. So, you know, they kind of eat just like I do, but maybe they don't eat it all the time because, you know, they're well-oiled machines that have to play football. You know, we're just watching them on the TV. We're not those guys. But to be able to kind of just bring out some more of that personality that they have. And I think working with the communications department kind of gave me a way to do that. It also helped me connect with my peers in the culinary industry and give me a lot better way. I know something I took a lot from corporate communications was conflict management in communication. A busy kitchen that's hot and not a lot of space to work, you definitely need some conflict management. So I use those skills every single day in the kitchen. I picked up my cooking skills from my grandmother and then went to another school and learned all the cooking techniques and then got into being a chef full time. But there's never a day where I didn't utilize my IC degree. I just never thought I'd use it in that way.
And you're talking about the players, and I did read that the Eagles with meals, they did player spotlights where a random player was picked, and then they asked about a signature meal that the chefs could make. Could you tell me about some maybe of the more unique dishes you've had to make or had your chefs make when doing this?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, but I hate to always go back to Brandon Graham, but he's one of my faves. You know, number 55 on the defense, love that guy. We all love him down in Philly because he sacked Tom Brady during the Super Bowl. But that guy knows how to eat. I mean, this is the guy asking me for steak and eggs twice a week at the grill. And when we did a spotlight meal, we said, we got to get a guy who's immediately going to respond to us with his love of food as much as we want to cook it for him. So we decided to start with Brandon Graham. What a great idea. He wanted something down home, country cooking. He wanted smothered pork chops, creamy roasted garlic mashed potatoes, and Southern style green beans. And we put that out there, and the response was huge. It's a certain type of food when it's that old school country cooking. It's comfort food. Maybe it's not what you think a professional athlete would eat, but that's something of Brandon's that his mother made the best. I asked him, I said, why do you like it so much? He said, man, it's just that damn good. It reminds me of being a kid. It reminds me of, mom will put that on the table after football practice one day. He's like, I always smashed it. He said it always got me excited to see what else she could whip up in the kitchen. And so we put that up as our first player spotlight meal. And then we did a couple more. And suddenly, instead of pulling guys out of a hat every week to try to figure out who we were going to get, we had players falling over each other to volunteer for this. Because the rules were, it can be anything you want. You got to tell us who cooked it the best. And we need a little bit of help on researching some recipes. Sometimes we even got it from the guys' mothers or their aunts or their grandmothers. A lot of times we'd have to go elsewhere and figure it out. But I'd say Brandon's was tops. Zach Ertz, tight end, great player, great guy, loves like LA street tacos, like food truck tacos. And so we did a lot of like street corn crusted with like the cheese and the fresh cilantro, and a lot of fresh made tortillas and fresh grilled meats, a lot of different salsas and spreads and things to try to recreate that atmosphere of what it's like to get one of these tacos off a food truck in Los Angeles. And another one that stands out to me that I thought was great, and it was Jason Peters. I mean, that's a long time Eagles standby, wonderful player, Pro Bowl player. He loved oxtails, beef oxtails, and red beans and rice and some good greens. I mean, when you get to the nitty gritty of it with some of these guys, just the feeling of, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say Americana of this food, that it's coming out of the South or the Midwest or the West Coast, the East Coast, the North. You kind of get a feeling for how these guys grew up based on what they eat. And so once again, just like the podcast, that player spotlight, another way to connect with our football players.
Okay. Now, there's been a few articles out involving you or about you. So just how well are you known within the Philadelphia Eagles community and also the wider NFL community?
I'm known about 10% in the wider NFL community based on people that I've actually met that have come to the Eagles NovaCare complex. I have kind of palled around and interviewed Matt Hasselbeck, who did Monday Night Countdown for a while. I know a few different couple different broadcasters. Chris Collinsworth told us we have the best pizza in the NFL. A lot of different guys would come in. Troy Aikman told me that we had one of the better cafeterias in the NFL. And it's great to hear that not only from broadcasters, but, guys that used to play, guys that are coming from other spots. So I think in the NFL, my name is very small. there's only a handful of guys that know me. I wanted to always expand it, but I'm right there in Philadelphia. They kind of have to come to me. I can't go to them. That would have been a whole other world of amazing possibilities. In the Philadelphia Eagles, I guess, even though I'm the first cook / grill chef, I was kind of the face of our culinary team. Doing the podcast put me in a position to have the opportunity to not only interview our players and our coaches and our staff about what they like to eat, but to go out into wider Philadelphia and go to the Italian market and talk with the head of the Bruno brothers about the traditions that are a part of that city in the Italian market. I went to Reading Terminal Market and interviewed the general manager and a lot of the vendors that were in there, and just how the different food culture in Philadelphia kind of shapes fan culture in Philadelphia. One of the coolest things I got to do, wasn't even talking to an expert. I walked in during the Super Bowl year. It was a Giants home game in September. We didn't even know we were going to the Super Bowl at this point. And I walked the tailgate parking lots. And I say lots because in Philly, there's a lot of different parking lots that have to be used. Tailgating is massive. And I walked through about 5 or 6 different parking lots, interviewing people randomly wherever they had a massive setup with meats roaring on a grill or a smoker going or something interesting going on food-wise. I'd stop and I'd say, hey, man, can you take a minute and talk to us, explain who I was? I cooked for the Eagles. I'm doing a show. I want to hear about the culture of tailgating, the food culture. And that was probably some of my happiest times, connecting with our fans in a completely different way than just being a fan myself, but being able to see, what are you guys eating on game day? You know, you're getting ready to go in there and watch the Eagles toss a team on the grill. What are you throwing on the grill in the parking lot that's going to just get you fired up? What foods do you eat? One of the things we developed at the Philadelphia Eagles that got known throughout our little community was devour the competition. I took a page out of the book, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. In the book, he says, know yourself, know your opponent, and you will win 100 battles on any battlefield. And so I kind of said, well, if we eat like our opponents, we kind of can think like them. It'll maybe give us an edge on game day. So Devour the Competition was born. And over the course of the years, I put together 32 different recipes for all 32 teams in the NFL. Anytime we're playing somebody home or away, we make the specialty one day a week from that city or from that team. We present it in our cafeteria. We get people to get behind the idea of eat like your opponent, think like your opponent, and then go beat your opponent.
It's interesting also, you said, Collinsworth said you guys had the best pizza. When you think of pizza, I think of New York. So you think it'd be like a Giants or Jets, or even Chicago if you consider a deep dish it for the Bears. But you did mention Devour the Competition. So I'm wondering if, for some reason, the Philadelphia Eagles were going to play the Cornell University football team or the Ithaca College football team, what meal would you make for Devour the Competition?
Well, that's a good one. Jeez. I got to think all the way back to my time at IC, and I don't know how much food tastes have changed in the area. I mean, heck, man, I used to go down to Moonshadows and get wings down there in the Commons. We used to go up to Billy Bob Jack's barbecue joint up by the Pyramid Mall and get some real good barbecue. You got to tell me, man. I've been away too many years. What's the most popular thing you got going? I'll tell you how we'd spin it in Philly.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, there's so many different stuff, but I mean, bubble tea, obviously, that's always big in college towns. And you got, street type food that there is, and there's a lot of different stuff, honestly. I don't know what you consider it, but definitely a lot of different food tastes in the area.
It's interesting. College food that applies and appeals to college students is almost the same as tailgate food. I don't know any college student that's ever going to say no to wings and pizza, And so upstate New York, I mean, a lot of times when we would do, like, say, if we're going to play the Buffalo Bills, okay, now that's not really close to IC, but for an upstate New York position, we would do buffalo wings, but I also started doing stuff at the State Fair in New York, and chicken speedies were invented there back in the late 19th century, So chicken speedies is something that upstate New York well known for, and I would definitely make that. Whenever we played the Bills, we had wings or buffalo dip, or we'd have chicken speedies. So I might do some of that, and then maybe if I had the opportunity to travel up to ISC, go to the Commons, find the best wings in town, and replicate those as a different spin on chicken wings from upstate New York. That's probably what I would do.
Okay. And you mentioned a couple players, and you were with the Eagles for 13 years. So do you keep in touch with former players, and do they maybe like ask you sometimes like, how do you make this? How do you make that? What do you recommend if I want to make a certain dish?
Yeah, I keep in touch with a couple guys. There's a lot of guys that have gone on. They will want something that I've made for them when they played with the team. The one that comes to mind is, oh God, now his first name's Benny. I don't know why I can't remember his last name. See, it's been so many years. Well, I'll tell you his story anyway. He had this massive breakfast sandwich, and he was a defensive end. And out of the blue one day, I get an email, and it's like, "Hey, it's Benny. I got your email from so and so over in the training department. Do you remember what you put on that sandwich 4 years ago?" And of course I do, you know? So I keep in touch with them. And I also, if it's a player spotlight, like we started that about 3 years ago, if it's something that maybe has slipped my mind, I mean, we keep records, but sometimes like their individual recipes, I'll reach out to those guys. I was just speaking with Brandon Graham the other day, and he's talking about the change in the food culture in the cafeteria, not only since I left, but in during COVID-19, it's a completely different thing on how you serve food, especially to professional athletes in that setting. And he's like, "Man, we're missing you here. I'm missing all them sandwiches you used to hook up last minute. And I'm missing some of the crazy ways you guys would do steak." And they can still do that, and they're still presenting really good things. But you have to understand, that's a walk-up kitchen. So if you're a football player and you're hungry, or you come off the field, or you're coming down the hall from a meeting, or you just left the weight room and you want to get something, you walk in, you walk up to me or one of our other chefs, say, "Make me this," and we just bang it out. Like it wasn't that you had to come a certain time of day. I mean, we did have breakfast, lunch, and dinner times, but anytime our guys are hungry, we're going to feed them. So anytime, especially now that I've left, I'm getting those messages. People are asking me for, we had a tradition of breakfast every Friday morning for breakfast fried rice. People are like, "How am I going to get the recipe now? You're not there. I need the recipe." And that's one thing I've got saved in my phone. It's on my computer. I got copies in my car that if anybody wants that recipe, I'm available. I'm always going to have a tie to that team when it comes to the food that they like and the type of people that they are, because just working there was incredible. It was incredible. It was very fulfilling to be able to fuel these guys up like a race car and watch them go out and kick butt on a Sunday. It just always felt like, I've got my hand in this thing and I'm helping these guys get to victory. And that's how all of our chefs feel working there.
So you mentioned some of the stuff that changes in COVID. So you mentioned how they can't come in anytime due to COVID. So
Sure.
what else do you know that's going to change in the kitchen? Like masks or social distancing in the kitchen, and how is that going to affect food preparation?
I would say everything that you've seen in the media about the way that kitchens and retail spaces and food service establishments have to operate, the Eagles are on top of that 100%. Everybody's masked up, everybody's wiping down surfaces, there's plexiglass screens up, and it's just a way to keep everybody safe, from the guy who's cooking the food to the guy that's eating the food. I know there's limits to who can come in the cafeteria and how many people we can have at one time, but it's a different type of, I guess I'd call it serving culture as opposed to food culture. I think the food culture is still there. Just getting to the actual food is a little bit more, I don't know, it's not, I wouldn't even say difficult. I'm just going to say it's a little bit more controlled. There's not so many open buffets. It's more of a service type thing. So yeah, they're on top of it though. They're 100% in control of that place. They got it cleaned. They got it locked down. They got staggered shifts. I mean, they're doing everything they need to do to keep that football team healthy and to get them on the field for game day.
Okay. And are there any foods or any dishes that are maybe you think would be made to maybe prevent players from, or make it so the players maybe recover better from COVID or able to fight it off better? Is there anything that can be done that way? obviously not eliminating it, but maybe making it less severe if they do get it?
That I can't really speak to because I'm not so much a food scientist as I am just a direct chef. I would say somebody with nutrition would know more about that. But from what I gleaned from our nutritionist and our nutritional coordinator, inflammation is a huge part of being a professional athlete. You want to reduce that as much as possible because when your body is put through the rigors that these guys have to go through, getting inflamed, your muscles getting inflamed is a problem. So I can't speak to COVID, but I can speak to inflammation. And we always had things put in place to help reduce that recovery time. And a lot of it was grains and greens. Always had a lot of different grains, like kale and spinach and chard, and different ways for them to incorporate it into their diet through a salad bar, through a saute station, even through a smoothie bar where they could put the different vegetables and nutrients and fruits and different things in that smoothie to help their recovery time take less time and to just, power their immune system through that recovery. Because as much as, you'd say, okay, well, your immune system's pretty much like when you're sick. I think also, putting your body under a lot of stress and a lot of heat and a lot of physical activity, your system is set up to help you recover from that. So any way that our fuel bar can do that, our smoothie bar, different things that we offer at, say, our clean eating station in the cafeteria where we cook things with not a lot of added fat. Some of our stuff is prepared where, like in vegetables, for instance, they're raw, where it maintains the height of nutrients in that product and gives these guys more of a clean eating aspect. So I'd say if they focus on those type of things, that'll help inflammation, that'll, decrease recovery time and keep them strong on the field. There's a lot of times you'll hear, athletes are always eating protein. It's also a lot about carbs, and it's about what day you're eating it. If you've got your game on Sunday, you don't want to carb load on Saturday. It takes carbs a certain amount of time to process through your body. Athletes process carbs at a very high efficiency. Myself, not so much. Okay, so when these guys carb load, their bodies process it into energy. I'm not as active as them, so you can see I'm a chunky guy. I know it. They say don't trust a skinny cook, so you can trust me all day long when I say they're machines at processing carbs, and then when they do their protein loading, it's exactly as important as that carb loading. And so the nutritional liaison, the coordinator, the chefs, our performance chef that does individual meals for specific players, literally have a meeting every single day that just makes sure all these guys are on point with their diets and make sure we're on point in the cafeteria too. So we're not putting out crazy amounts of foods that aren't healthy on certain days, or that all the options have been explored, that the clean eating station is fully stocked, that we're providing a nutritious all-around meal for people to have.
Okay. And I'm curious what the camaraderie is between chefs on you and chefs on other teams. Are you sharing stuff with each other, or are you kind of keeping that tight, clutch to your chest like a team would do with a playbook?
We keep it clutched right here. Okay, I may have made recipes for all 32 teams for that Devour the competition. I don't share that with anybody. Now, you could go on my Instagram or look on my page, or sometimes the Eagles would post what Devour the competition was, but you're not getting my recipe. Some of those recipes are not only time tested, some of them are player sourced too, because I'll talk to the guys, like if we're playing, for instance, the Bengals from Cincinnati, I'll talk to the guys who know Skyline Chili up there. Brent Selleck's from up there, and his grandmother had a recipe for that. I sourced that recipe right from Brent's grandmother, and he told me never give this out. And I treat all my recipes like that when it comes to what I'm making at the Eagles. If it's something that's a part of our Devour the competition, or something that's a direct part of the way we can affect our team's performance through food. So, but that one sticks out to me because I'll never forget. It's not like he sent it to me on the phone and just texted it over. Like, he came in with a photocopied index card with her handwriting on it. It said, "This is my Nana's recipe. Never share this with anybody else." And I'm not going to go up against a football player and tell them, I gave it to like 3 or 4 guys. No, that's going to go with me to my deathbed. So we will we won't share too much about the way we cook. We'll share pictures, but we keep our recipes pretty tight to the vest. As for camaraderie, it was always like a big family, man. You know, we had our family back in that kitchen, and it interacted with that football family, whether it was trainers, football operation, front office staff, building staff, our Eagles entertainment staff, human resources, public relations, the janitorial staff, the trainers, even the owner and the top coach, and a lot of the top players like our quarterback and a lot of other guys. It was always a family. We always talked to each other on the same playing field, on the same level, because it's a big thing. If you want to get respect, you have to give it first. And it's always given. I mean, I always felt like a part of that family, and I'm not even there now, and I still feel like a part. Not a day goes by that they don't reach out to me, and I reach back. You know, we're still trading recipes and stories and seeing how each other are doing and keeping up with what's going on. Every morning I try to see what's going on over there, just in case when I do have any downtime, if they need me, they can throw out a lifeline and say, Tim, can you come in for a couple of hours on a Saturday and help us out? You know, being a school teacher now, I won't have to work Saturdays, but I've always been working Saturdays since I got my culinary degree in 2001. So it's going to feel weird for me. And if they need me, I'll be there, because you're there for your family. And that's a family. It's a football family. They made me a huge part of that family, not only with the podcast, but just the way in which they make sure that we're taken care of, make sure that we're all right. Because I think they know the secret. You know, if this team is going to run on our food, you know, you got to have happy chefs, because they're going to cook happy, they're going to make great food, and the players are going to be happy, and they're going to play better. So it's definitely a top-down thing where the top guy's looking down on the guy on the bottom and saying, he's got to be as happy as I am, or this isn't going to work. I think that's one of the best things about the Philadelphia Eagles organization. I'm always going to treasure that.
Sounds very good. Now, I know you host a podcast as a chef, but are there any other chefs on any other teams or even on the Eagles that also host podcasts that are, I guess, team-centric?
No, I'm the only one. It was a $1 million idea, and I think I got about $3 out of that million for it. As far as I can tell, to this day, I am the only chef who worked in the NFL who had a podcast where I talked to players about what they like to eat, their diets, and how it shapes their life in football. And it's just grown exponentially. I mean, when we started doing the podcast, we didn't even think we were going to get players. I was so enthralled with what we do at the Philadelphia Eagles. I just wanted to show off. And I talk a lot. I mean, I have a gift for gab. So I wanted to show off and like interview our chefs about what it's like to work with our huge double barrel smoker in the back. I mean, we can smoke 10 or 20 Thanksgiving turkeys back there on one side, and then in the separate barrel do enough ribs for 300 people. It's a huge piece of equipment, and that was my idea when it started. I'm like, I just want to talk about that, because tailgate culture and football culture, they're like a match made in heaven. So I figured if I could do a podcast talking about how we cook things for a football team, we could get some of the tailgate people interested, and maybe I could have a dream. That was one of my dreams, to walk the tailgate lot and just talk to people about their food. Talking about where you come from with your food culture is something that just I'm passionate about. Like, I want to know where everybody comes from, what their mom made them when they were growing up, and how they connected to certain areas of their life, but how it connects them to where they are from in the country, and just get a better sense of who this person is through their food. And lo and behold, Philadelphia Eagles Productions, now called Eagles Entertainment, they said, well, why don't you pitch us this idea? And immediately they're like, all right, we want 8 episodes. Each episode we want about 20 minutes. Start thinking of players you want to interview. And I looked at the guy who was then to become my producer, and I went, Brian, you told me we weren't going to get any players. He says, keep your mouth shut and we'll get more players. He's like, just go with the flow. If they want to give us players, let's get players. And so our first episode was Carson Wentz, because if you're going to start a food podcast in the NFL, you got to talk to the quarterback of the team you're working for. Because, if you're talking to like a third string guy in the practice field, there's nothing wrong with that. His diet's just as important. But if I can talk to the quarterback, that's going to turn some heads. That's going to get people interested in this tiny little food podcast. Now, this is the August of 2017. We didn't know we were going to the Super Bowl that year. We didn't know we were going that year. We always assume we're going every year because that's the type of energy that's there in that building. But when I started the podcast, I had no idea it was going to lead us to a Super Bowl. I had no idea I'd be interviewing guys right before the NFC Championship game, or that I'd actually be able to go to the Super Bowl. I even got a ring out of the deal. Mr. Lurie was nice enough that he gave everybody who works in the kitchen a Super Bowl ring. So I have a Super Bowl ring. I haven't played football a day in my life. Who can say that?
Yeah, it's true. Where do you keep that Super Bowl ring?
I keep it right here. You want to see it?
Sure, why not?
All right, hang on. Most of the time, it is in storage inside of a safe that I have. But I kept it out a little while because I went to an event about a week or two ago, and I like to bring the ring because I like to tell stories about getting the ring. So here she is.
Wow. Yeah, it is cool seeing it rather, through a camera rather than through the TV, because the TV is a little bit farther away. It's very cool.
I mean, one of the things when I was interviewing for the job to become a teacher, the biggest question they asked me is, it sounds to me like you got it made at the Eagles. Why do you want to be a teacher? And I talked a lot about the hours. I talked about the reward of inspiring new chefs and everything. But I said, look, the one thing I want you to take away from this interview, if you don't remember anything else I said, and I showed him the Super Bowl ring, I said, I have a commitment to food that is almost an obsession. I am very, very highly motivated to cook for anybody that's hungry. And this ring was kind of like an amazing award that was given to me because of my passion for food and my dedication to feeding those athletes. I said, and if that's what that ring represents, this is the type of person I am. I plan to bring that passion for food and food culture to your school, because I believe that the kids should be as excited about cooking food and entering this industry as I am to have done that for 13 years with in the NFL. I never saw that come. When I got out of culinary school, I worked in country clubs, I worked in restaurants, I worked at a few dive bars, and I got into work at corporate dining, and that's how I got into the gig with the Eagles. But I didn't see that coming when I graduated culinary in 2001. I went down to New York City right after 9/11, enrolled in a culinary program, got out of there about a year and a half, 2 years later. And the first place I went was Philadelphia because I'd never been there. Who the heck knew? Who knew? From 2001 to 2017 up through 2020 that I would have been that big of a part of the culture of Philadelphia to be able to cook for the best team in the league. And I know a lot of guys that say, well, that's your opinion. Yeah, it is my opinion because I worked for the best team in the league. I worked for the best kitchen in the league, so I know what it's like. And it's all true, man. True stories. I'll tell you all the true stories.
Now, it is a struggle to keep healthy in college, and obviously I'm a college student. A lot of listeners here will be college students. So what advice would you give to college athletes and also regular students, especially those at college, to kind of keep healthy and also maximize athletic performance?
I'm going to give you the advice that not so much was given to me, but that I listened being given through the guys that I interviewed on that podcast. I would say for your average college student, and especially your college athlete, don't let fatigue or stress or being tired from work that you're doing academically or work that you're doing on the playing field get in the way of you eating a little bit healthier. I know there's a lot of guys, Zach Ertz, Brandon Graham, Carson Wentz would always tell me my eating was very different in college, and I think it's the time that they decided to make that change in their diet, which has led them to be better athletes and better students. And I mean, we all have heard the saying, if you don't get a good night's sleep, you're going to be no good the next morning. Well, if you don't eat well, you're not going to be very good the next morning. Now, I know college students, because I was one, we tend to stay out late, we tend to party a lot, we drink a lot, and we eat a lot. I mean, we eat a lot of pizza and hot wings and hoagies and all that type of stuff. But that whole freshman 10 or freshman 15, everybody thinks it's a myth. There are people out there qualifying for it, You see those guys walking around that weigh a little bit more than they did when you met them, back in August or September. I would say try to get control of your diet and maybe try to eat a little bit more like you ate when you were more active in high school. Sometimes if guys go to college, they may become less active unless they're joining a team. I'd say the more active people are, they need a diet that's focused on that activity to keep them, doing well on the football team or the soccer team, basketball team, whatever type of team you're on. If you're not on a team and you're not active, maybe put yourself into a way that you can become more active and find a way to eat where you're maximizing not carbohydrates all the time, but when you eat them, and maximizing, protein intake when you're eating it, not just, I'm really hungry because I ran, 3 miles today, so I'm going to have like a pizza with the works. So from the guys who were in collegiate sports that went on to the NFL, the minute they decided to change that diet, and a lot of times it was from prodding. It was prodding from guys that were their trainers. It was prodding from guys they looked up to. It was coming to the NFL and going, look, I might be graduating at age, 19 or 20, but if I want to have longevity in my career in the NFL, I got to start eating better. I got to start taking better care of my body, because you can have a longer career if you take good care of yourself. If you don't, you're going to have a shorter career. And I mean, there's times a year where those guys will splurge and they'll have guilty pleasures, but they're working out throughout the year. Even when I don't see them, there's workout programs going on. So they know how they have to eat to maintain what they've got, and they don't want to lose any of it. So that's what I'd say for college students. I mean, it's tough, man. It's tough, especially if you go to dining hall. If you have a really good dining hall, IC Dining Hall was always really good. A lot of good restaurants in IC downtown. A lot of good restaurants all over the place, man. Just pick your battles. Don't go everywhere and have everything you want. Just try to look at your health, because a freshman 15 can turn into a senior 40 pounds real easy. It happened to me. Don't let it happen to you. Okay.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, Tim.
Anytime, Mike. And thank you so much for reaching out to me. I'm always available to talk about my time at IC or talk about my career in and outside the NFL. So, and of course, always, man, food culture. Take the time to explore your friends and family's food culture and new people that you meet. A lot of times we experience in other cultures through food first. We may not learn their language or their dance or their history first. We might learn about them through food. There's nothing wrong with food being a gateway. Just try to make connections through food, and I think you'll have a great time.
Well, thank you. For ICTV Sports and WICB Sports, I'm Michael Memes.
So long.